Senator Sinema, thank you so much for having this hearing. This is an incredibly important topic. I've had the privilege of being down along the Arizona border with you a couple of times to be able to see firsthand what is happening there. Had the opportunity to be able to meet some of our witnesses that we have today in that same area as well, and it's incredibly important that we get these issues on the record as part of the congressional record as well. So thanks for continuing to be able to work on this. Last Congress, we took a look at the issues facing our ports of entry along the southwest border in two separate hearings. During those hearings, we discussed numerous issues around the ongoing border crisis and what's happening in the ports of entries around drug interdiction. Now we're dealing with the Title 42 issue, and the Title 42 issue, Title 42 status now expiring if a court doesn't intervene on May the 11th, which is coming incredibly quickly, which will make the worst border situation in American history even worse. The United States Customs and Border Patrol Protection has encountered more than 5 million migrants at the southern border since January of 2021. CBP has seized more than 35,000 pounds of fentanyl along the southern border since January 2021. In the first 6 months of this fiscal year, CBP has seized nearly the same amount of fentanyl it did during the entire fiscal year 2022. CBP has seized more than 350,000 pounds of meth along our southern border since 2021. That is the primary killer in my state, in Oklahoma. Based on DHS projections, we'll likely see between 11,000 and 13,000 migrants cross the border per day once Title 42 expires on the 11th of May. And based on current trends, the fentanyl and hard narcotics that are being interdicted at the border will continue to skyrocket. While I'm glad that we're catching a lot of these deadly drugs, we also understand that there's a tremendous number that we are not catching as they're coming across the border. As Senator Sinema has rightfully noted, the situation has significant impacts on our communities, border communities, but also not just our border communities, but as has been often said, every state is a border state now with the movement of illegal drugs into our country. Just last week, Mayor Eric Adams claimed that the national government has turned its back on New York City due to the significant number of migrants who have resettled there. He is facing a $4.2 billion budget shortfall, and in his own words, every service in New York City is going to be impacted by the asylum seeker crisis. Here in Washington, D.C., Mayor Bowser has declared a state of emergency over the number of recent border crossers who have arrived and has urged the White House to activate the D.C. National Guard in response, which the White House has not chosen to actually do. Both this administration and the Trump administration activated FEMA at the border to address the border crisis. However, DHS, Inspector General, and Government Accountability Office have raised concerns about the need for more oversight and transparency regarding FEMA's use of taxpayer dollars at the border with how they're actually being used. The effects of this crisis are readily apparent in my home state. In 2021, which is the last year where we have complete data, Oklahoma reported 604 methamphetamine-related deaths and almost 300 fentanyl-related deaths. Most of those drugs came across the border from Mexico. CBP has done some really good work recently through Operation Blue Lotus to stop dangerous drugs from entering the country. They've had some good success with Blue Lotus. However, CBP told my staff in a recent briefing that they will terminate Operation Blue Lotus to interdict drugs coming across the border on May the 11th. They've told us that it has nothing to do with Title 42 ending, but that is way too coincidental that the same day Title 42 ends, CBP is also ending, through instructions from the White House, Operation Blue Lotus to interdict drugs along our border. While CBP says it's coincidental, it's hard to believe. Addressing the upcoming surge when Title 42 terminates will require significant manpower and intelligence support. And we assume that CBP will be strained at that moment, and so they'll be literally pulling people off the line, interdicting drugs, to deal with the quantity of migrants coming. Between 2017 and 2021, fentanyl deaths in Oklahoma grew by more than 450%. Between 2020 and 2021, fentanyl deaths doubled. While all of us are aware of these drugs on our communities, the border crisis has some other very unique and concerning impact on Oklahoma and an increase in labor trafficking as well. This is not a surprise. We've tracked it for years. A New York Times investigation recently found that unaccompanied minors have been placed in severe labor trafficking situations all across the country. This is an affront to the rule of law and shows just how inhumane our current border policies are. The Office of Intelligence, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection recently informed my staff there's been a significant uptick in the number of migrants who are paying the cartels a deposit to cross the border and then are forced to work off the rest of their debt they owe to the cartels while they're in the country. In Oklahoma, some of these migrants will end up working in horrible labor trafficking conditions at marijuana farms across the state. A spokesman for the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics recently stated, specifically related to the marijuana industry here in Oklahoma, we've had some workers who haven't been paid, who are living in deplorable conditions on some of these farms. They would meet the definition of labor trafficking, human trafficking, but they won't verbalize a complaint because of the fear and the desperation of that job. Last December, 4 Chinese nationals were brutally executed on an illegal marijuana farm in Oklahoma. While investigators have not released to us the immigration status of those Chinese nationals, NBC News reported that law enforcement officials have reported a rise in black market operators using human trafficking victims, including Chinese nationals, to grow and trim marijuana sold in legal dispensaries. Continued reports in the media and prior investigations by this committee have found that our open border facilities are facilitating labor trafficking across the country. One of our witnesses today will speak to another impact of the border crisis on communities in Oklahoma. Chief Hurd of the McAllister Police Department will share a story about an illegal immigrant who tragically killed one of his police officers recently. This individual should have been stopped at the border and prevented from entering without status. While our border security failed in this instance, this illegal immigrant was able to remain in the United States because the Biden administration has handcuffed ICE officers by forcing them to process recent border crossers rather than find and remove illegal immigrants. Strong border security does not begin or end at the border. It requires interior enforcement to ensure that those who break the law and cross the border illegally face consequences and are deported. Let me show you one quick chart on this to be able to show you graphically what I mean by this. This chart shows the number of people that are being encountered coming across our border since 2015. It's the orange line, and you can see that great acceleration. The blue line are actually ICE removal numbers. How many people ICE has actually removed from the country? You'll notice in 2020, the numbers started skyrocketing for the number of people coming into the country illegally, but since 2021, the number of removals has plummeted almost to zero. So literally at the moment, we have record numbers of people illegally crossing the border. We also have almost no one in the country actually being removed by ICE. Literally, people are coming in and almost no one is being removed by ICE in the interior of the country. I hope this administration strengthens a proposal that is put out for comment. We've yet to be able to hear that they're going to actually implement the proposal they put in place to be able to deal with asylum requests coming across the border. They've received comments, they've closed the comment period, but we've yet to see if they're, number one, going to actually enforce this rule or if they're going to continue to be able to strengthen this rule. I'm interested today to hear from our witnesses about the impacts on the border crisis in the communities they serve, and I do appreciate very much all of these individuals traveling a very long distance to be able to be here as a part of this hearing today. Senator Sinema, I would ask for 2 other pieces of information to be entered into the record. One is the Bureau of Narcotics from Oklahoma on the drug threats in Oklahoma, our specific data, and the other one is a letter from Wade Gorley, the police chief in Oklahoma City, about what is happening in our state, specifically in drug use and how this has rapidly spiked in the days ahead.
Without objection.
Thank you. And I do appreciate our witnesses here and appreciate the hearing today.